Hey, everybody, welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kirby. And of course, this show is all about trying to help the small and medium-sized nonprofits doing amazingly great things. And I think one of the things that a small and medium-sized nonprofit can benefit from is research. I know you probably haven't done that since college, and I know you probably haven't opened up a book and done paper reports. So why not get folks who do this all the time on the show and help us sort of skip all of that sort of like behind the book nerdy things. Let's get to the answers. I am extremely excited to have Kachuriak. I was going to get it right the first time, dang it. I looked at it and I should have gone with my gut instinct. Tim Kachuriak, who is the CEO and co-founder of NextAfter. They are a resource library, a fundraising lab. They're an experimental fundraising research organization. We're going to learn some stuff today, and I'm super jazzed about it. Tim, welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast.
Patrick, thanks for having me, man. This is going to be fun.
I'm extremely excited. So if somebody is combing through, Apple Podcasts, they're looking through YouTube, they're finding they're looking at Tim and NextAfter, and I'm really curious about some sort of fundraising lab. Tell me kind of from a 5,000-foot view, kind of what you do and how you got there in the first place.
Well, sure. Just a little brief background on myself. So I graduated college right after 9/11. Horrible time to enter into the job market, especially for somebody who desperately wanted to work in the field of marketing and advertising. But fortunately, I worked at a country club all during high school and college. So for 9 years. And so I like to joke, I had 432 aunts and uncles that were captains of industry. So the guy who was the president of the country club happened to be also the president of the second largest ad agency in Pittsburgh, where I grew up. I went and met with him, did my little dog and pony show. He's like, I'd love to hire you, kid, but you know what? 9/11 has hit our industry hard, our agency harder. We laid off 30 people yesterday. Sorry, I can't help you. So 6 months wandering in the wilderness, trying to find something to do. I met a serial entrepreneur at a golf outing and kind of told him what I was interested in doing. He's like, well, maybe you could do some projects for some of these little businesses I have. And I said, that sounds great. And he said, you know what, why don't you start your own business? And I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. He's like, I do. We've got an incubator on the second floor of our office building. I'll give you a desk and introduce you to people. I'll be your partner and the rest is up to you, kid. And I'm like looking around. I'm like, I'm living in my parents' basement. I have no overhead. I have no prospects. Why not? So I did that for the first 5 years. I ran this little interactive marketing company called Ambience Interactive. We started off just doing anything that would pay money. We kind of gravitated more towards digital marketing type stuff. And this was a time when general market ad agencies didn't have in-house capabilities to do that. So they had to outsource it to little boutiques like us. And that was great. And moved out of the incubator, had a small staff and had payroll, learned all the things that it takes to run a business. And then about 5 years into it, my church was doing a capital campaign to build a new worship building. And I volunteered our agency to do all the marketing materials for that campaign. And it was the first time that I did something, that I felt like I was really wired to do, but for a cause I cared about. And like, once I got bit by that bug, I was like, it's all over. You know what I mean? I can't go back to making like car dealership websites or making websites for lawyers anymore. Right. So I called up a buddy of mine who had just made a bold career move himself. He had shut down his financial planner business in Pittsburgh and went to accept the job of executive vice president of a nonprofit in South Florida. So I called him up. I'm like, hey man, what's going on down there? He's like, dude, you should come check it out. He's like, I just hired this guy. He's a rocket scientist, like used to work for DirecTV, sending satellites to space and stuff. And like, he needs to hire some people on the technology side. And I was like, cool. So I fly to Fort Lauderdale. I leave Pittsburgh. There's 6 inches of snow on the ground. My interview is at this place called the Aruba Beach Cafe, which is right on A1A, right on the sand. The sliding glass doors are open. The waves are crashing onto the sand. The sea breeze is blowing through my hair. The guy's playing the little bling, 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 bling. And I was like, I'm in, right? So went back home, sold our business, sold our house in the matter of like, I think 45 days and moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, go to work for this nonprofit faith-based organization. The day I get there, the guy who was the 35-year veteran, like head of the organization, had a heart attack. He was hospitalized for about 9 months and then he passed away. So we went from being a $36 million a year organization to 18 in 12 months. So basically cut in half.
Yeah.
And I was hired to do digital communications for them, but they said, look, whatever you're doing on this internet stuff, you need to figure out how it generates revenue because we're just hemorrhaging, right? Mm-hmm. So that was my first violent shove into the world of fundraising. And I discovered that there's basically like advertising agencies that work with nonprofits. I had no idea that this existed. And we worked with a group based out of Dallas called KMA Direct Communications. They were our agency. I got to know the CEO and he's like, look, I don't know what your prospects are here, but we've been doing direct mail for 35 years, right? And we're desperately trying to move into this brave new digital world. Would you consider coming to Dallas and starting up a digital fundraising division at our agency? And I was like looking around, I'm like, yeah, sure. So we moved from Fort Lauderdale to Dallas in 2008. I go to work for KMA Direct Communications. I was there for about 2.5 years. We got acquired by another agency called the Pursuant Group. And during that time at KMA and Pursuant, I really just became obsessed with trying to figure out how do we optimize digital fundraising. There was a lot of things that people were trying and doing, sometimes it would work, sometimes it didn't work. But my obsession was just like, how do we really like take this thing to the next level? And so I started, studying, and I started like actually studying a lot of things that were happening in the for-profit digital space. And I'd go to all these conferences. I went to this one conference put on by a group called MEC Labs, which is the parent company for Marketing Sherpa. And it was this like email fundraising or email marketing optimization summit. And in the first 15 minutes, like it blew back my hair. I was like, this is amazing. I said, and I called my team. I remember this. I called my team at the first break and I said, guys, get ready. Because when I get back, we're going to change the way we do everything. Right. I said, like, why wait till Monday though? Because we had just got the contract to do all the digital fundraising for the $300 million capital campaign to build the George W. Bush Presidential Center on the campus of SMU University. And we were doing anything that anybody would do if you're trying to acquire donors online. Like we're doing social media and we're doing Facebook ads and we're doing, search engine marketing and we're renting email lists. And we had an email going out that day. We had been doing this for quite some time and it had been very successful. Mm-hmm. But what I was learning at this conference is that good is the enemy of great, that adequacy is the enemy of excellence, and that the web is the greatest behavioral laboratory that's ever existed. Because what you can do with the web is you can run experiments and be able to test a version A versus a version B and know like instantly what works and what doesn't work. So I said to my team, I said, give me like an hour. We're getting ready to send out an email to 200,000 people. I said, give me an hour. I want to try to come up with a new recipe. And we'll run a 50-50 A/B split test and see if this stuff actually works. So I'm looking at this email and I'm trying to like process all the things I was learning at this conference and like immediately put it into action. And I kind of chickened out. So like I made one tiny change to the email. It was to the very last sentence of the email, which also happened to be the call to action. And I sent back to the team a new version of the email. We ran an A/B split test. 100,000 people got version A, 100,000 people got version B, which is the new version. And that one change produced a 139% increase in click-through, a 42% increase in revenue. And I was absolutely hooked. I was like, this could change everything, right? Because being a consultant, as you know, I mean, like everybody looks at you like you have all the answers.
Yep.
And we know deep down inside, we don't always have all the answers, right? And so when I discovered testing and experimentation, that this really just kind of freed me up to be willing to go take the best ideas and put them to the test. And the ultimate test happens in the marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. And not in the boardroom. And so, that was kind of what really got things going for me. So after that, I was like, well, I want to just do this for the rest of my life, optimize stuff. It feels really good. And so that's when I left in 2012 to start NextAfter. And what NextAfter has grown into today is it's three things. So we're a fundraising research lab, we're a consultancy, and we're a training institute. And each of those pieces kind of fit together to I think, fulfill our unique value proposition. So we talked a little bit about this before we went live, but one of the types of research we do is kind of forensic research, where we're analyzing large amounts of data across the sector, across multiple different verticals in the sector. And what we're looking for is patterns that lead to opportunities to unlock greater digital performance. The problem is that most of the data that we're interested in analyzing either doesn't exist or is not readily accessible. Mm-hmm. Because what I'm obsessed with is trying to understand and experience the charity, the nonprofit organization from the donor's point of view. So to get that perspective, we thought the best way to do that is just by becoming donors ourselves. So we started doing these mystery donor studies, where we'll simply go out, subscribe to hundreds of different organizations, all shapes and sizes across the industry. We'll subscribe to their content. We'll monitor what they send us. And when they ask us to make a financial gift, we respond by giving an online donation as small as $20, as large as $5,000. And then we continue to monitor how they communicate with us over time. And what's so fascinating about this is that oftentimes I'll have two organizations that are similar in terms of their size, their scope, their area of focus, and they've got two radically different communication practices. So when we see that, we say, okay, well, if organization A is doing one thing, organization B is doing something else, how do we know what really works? And so that's where we started to kind of get into like the testing side of things. Well, let's take the best ideas that we glean from these mystery donor studies, and we'll go put them to the test. We'll work with organizations directly and run A/B split tests and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And so to date, I think we've documented about 2,500 online fundraising experiments. We have the largest digital fundraising research library in the world. And that's the basis of really all of our knowledge today.
I see, this is the thing. I could listen to you talk about this all day, because honestly, this is exactly the type of like super nerdy fundraising stuff that I get super jazzed about. And I know kind of the listeners are the same way. I have so many questions.
Okay,
so
fire away.
I need to dive into a couple of them. So one of them is, let's just start from like the experience that you had as a donor, because I think this is super fascinating. And because we're going to get into like the experiments and the A/B testing, and I love that. But as an experience from a donor, what did you see that was right away jarring, or the biggest differences that you saw from like A and B, a similar organization? What was the most radical difference between two organizations that were relatively similar but had way different responses?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing that we've taken away from this is like, because we've done so many of these mystery donor studies, we've developed a lot of empathy for what donors must go through.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one specific area that every organization needs to focus on, and that is their donation page, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go click the donate button and you land on the donation page, less than 25% of people actually complete the transaction. Why? Right? Well, one of the reasons why people don't complete the transaction is because we make it too doggone difficult for them to complete the transaction.
Yes.
We ask them too many questions. They're required to put too many pieces of data in there. We ask them questions that they don't know the answers to. Pick one of these 62 different gift designations to designate your gift. I don't know the difference between either of these. It's an impossible decision. And if I can't make the decision, I bail from the process. Or we ask them to try to make a transaction and go through multiple steps, right? Where they have like all of these different things that they have to do in order to complete the process. That's what we refer to as friction in the giving process. And friction kills online donations.
You're trying to get those sort of initial small gifts that somebody's really moved by your story, really moved by something. They are in the mood to give, right? They're in the mood, and nothing kills that buzz worse than, oh crap, now I got to go through this giant sort of inquisitive 20-step process that doesn't allow me to give. And all of a sudden, by the time I'm on answer number 5, my will to give has been eliminated, rather than giving them a great experience.
Exactly.
So that your follow-up process can be so much more beneficial, because that goes to my next question is, while you were going through this, what was your experience like from an appreciation standpoint? Because what I'm finding too, and I don't know if you're finding this too, organizations still have a hell of a time showing great appreciation in the most simple sort of ways, like even saying thank you for a gift still. And we hammer this all the time. Well, how is that? Why is that a thing?
I don't know. I mean, it's the simplest thing to do. Like, I can't tell you how many times we've pressed the submit button, which, by the way, submit is a horrible label for a button. Submit, bow down before the lords of nonprofits. And, I mean, it's a bad thing. But once you hit that submit my transaction button, it's like transaction is complete, robot sequence complete. It's like not, thank you. We've done it experiments where we actually like, once they hit that, give now button and they complete the transaction, we have like little digital confetti that comes down, like, congratulations, you're part of the family, you're making a difference, and this is something to be celebrated. And then we follow up and just love on that donor with multiple different ways of saying thank you. We say we need to say thank you 3 times, right?
Yes.
Thank you on the confirmation page, thank you in the email, and then thank you through some other type of communication, whether that be a phone call, whether that be a piece of a letter or handwritten note. I mean, we have to do thank you 3 times is what we preach.
I'll occasionally win a fantasy football thing on my ESPN app. And when I open it up on like Tuesday morning, the same thing happens. Like, holy crap, you won. Like it's excited for me for winning a fantasy football. And I want to immediately click in and either like talk smack or engage more or set my lineup. And yet you go, like you said, you go to a landing page and it is just the most basic script of all times. And there's no photos and there's no appreciation. Wouldn't it be interesting if you said, congratulations, your gift just did this?
Exactly.
Even that is a small token. Like if you can't get to the phone within 24 hours, at least you got something out there to just get them excited about what they just accomplished.
That's right.
You want them to then continue the conversation, click on their Facebook page, maybe go to the website and learn a little bit about more because you got them on the hook right there.
That's right. And you know, the donor is the customer and the product is the impact that they're able to have through your organization. And when you do some of the things that you're talking about, like you're creating a micro impression, and what that does is that is priming them for the next time that you engage with them. Once they have that kind of feeling with your organization, they're more apt to open your emails, they're more apt to click, they're more apt to give again. And I have data to prove all of those things.
I love that so much. Following up with that question, because I know you mentioned a couple of this, the submit button, which is hilarious. I've never thought about it that way, and I'm going to think about it for the rest of eternity now. So thank you for that. And just the kind of the robotic sound of it. Have you discovered some of the, instead of best practices, worst practices you've seen and things to avoid? Maybe top 2 or 3. I know you probably have a list of 50, but anything that stands out, like top 2 or 3 things that you just need to avoid for all intents and purposes if you're a nonprofit as part of this process for a donation?
Absolutely. So going back to the donation page, not only is friction an issue, which is anything that causes psychological resistance to a given element on the page, but there's also this anxiety factor that comes into play, right? So like, you know, anytime anybody makes any sort of transaction online, in the back of their head, there's this defensive posture, right? Is this organization really going to do what they said they're going to do? Is my transaction safe? Are they going to sell my data and information? And so if you understand that that is something that is inside people's minds, there's little things you can do. I'm going to give all of your listeners one simple thing that they can do that can increase their conversion rate, like at least 10 to 15%. In the little payment area, get your web developer to just shade that portion of the form in a color. It could be gray or blue, just a slight difference in color from the rest of the form. And then go to Google, type in Google Images, the word padlock, find the first little padlock logo that you find and stick it in that little gray box area. We have tested that with multiple organizations and it increases conversion between 10 and 20%, that one little thing. Because what it does is it reinforces the idea that the page is secure. Does that make the page any more secure? Absolutely not. Is everybody's page already secure? I'm almost 100% guaranteed it is. But that one thing actually fosters this little kind of subconscious idea that my transaction is in fact secure. Another thing is like underneath buttons, use that space to put little text. You know, we will never share or sell or do anything with your stuff. Next to the payment area, another place is a good place to put your seals, your guide star or your charity navigator seal of approval at that point, like right there next to where they put in the credit card information, because that is the point of greatest anxiety on the donation page. So those are some quick tips.
That's brilliant. It's worth
I'm going to share a
listen.
nightmare though.
Yeah.
I have to share a nightmare story. Okay, so this is in the course of doing one of these mystery donor studies. Right there in that area, right next to the payment information, which I told you is the most anxiety inducing part of the process. There was these 2 disclaimers. The first one was like, fraud alert. A person identifying himself as blankety blank is attempted to defraud individuals by making an affiliation with blankety blank organization. They have no affiliation with blankety blank or any other member agency. And if that was not enough, in big bold letters directly below it, it says, Please click the donate button only once. Do not click back or refresh your browser. Any of these actions will result in your credit card being charged more than once and you being sentenced to a lifetime in hell. I mean, it was just like crazy, right? Right? I mean, who does that? So little tips.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, this is absolute just gold. I love it. If you're a nonprofit and you look at your donation site as something that is fine by you, is it okay for you to take a couple of donors? And I think this is kind of a way that I think maybe you can interact with your donors without asking them for a gift, and yet ask them for their opinion, which is an ask unto itself because they're engaged in your organization, is, hey, would you walk with me through online your donor experience online and give us some feedback to how you feel about it? That immediately is going to get you buy-in from that individual to say, wow, they value my opinion because I'm a valued donor. And you're going to get real-time feedback from your actual donors on how comfortable that they feel donating, and give you sort of like what they like, what they dislike, and what the other things that they endure themselves to you and the organization anyway. Why wouldn't they be honest about that?
Exactly. No, that's brilliant. That's great advice. And even before they do that, they should go give a donation to themselves. I can't tell you how many people that I've met that have never had to go through their own donation process, and they go through it and they're like, this is horrible. This sucks. I mean, like just that one little action can lead to so many insights of things you could do to optimize that experience.
I think one of the things that nonprofits, especially in the small, medium-sized organizations, do is when they hear A/B testing, and when they hear you got to experiment with their donors, two things happen. One is, I don't have time for this. Right. And then number two is, if it doesn't work, we have ruined our relationships with our donors because I don't know how this works and I'm so confused and whatever. That's why your organization exists, is to sort of relieve them of this sort of pressure, because you've already done the research on their behalf on what works and what doesn't. How do you convince a small or medium-sized nonprofit to kind of relax? It's going to be okay. We know best practices now because we've run so many scenarios that it's okay. But how do you have that initial conversation with somebody who's really hesitant about doing that with their organization?
Well, the data speaks louder than words, right? So like when you show somebody that here's something that represents kind of like what your page looks like today, and here's a different version of it, and this one gets 132% increase in conversion rate, like it's hard to really argue with that.
Right.
But in addition to those two pieces of pushback, the third thing that comes up oftentimes is not just that I don't have enough time, or we're worried about like actually disrupting relationships, but like I don't have a large enough file to be able to get any sort of statistical significance with my tests. Yeah. And that's why, again, we do all of that testing for you, right? So we've done all the experiments. We've tested and retested with multiple different organizations to try to be able to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And all of that stuff has been open source. So we've open sourced our entire library. All 2,500 experiments are available on our website, and anybody can go access any of those any point in time.
What I love about the internet, and I think you can get really bogged down in sort of what's wrong with the internet. What's great on the internet is this exact thing, which is open source. You can find all of these answers now. But if you had like a place to go and you go to NextAfter, you don't have to search anymore. It's right there. One of the questions that I think we ask a lot, and you've been involved in direct mail and now a lot of the e-versions of them as well, is the postscript. There is a large debate on whether you should do a postscript and what should be involved there. I've talked with a lot of copywriters, copy editors, and there's not a lot of, we all assume there should be a postscript. What should be on there? Should you do a postscript? Is it cool to do that anymore? Where are we? Where do we stand here at the end of the year in 2020 with the postscript to an appeal letter?
Yeah, so this is an area of difference between digital and direct mail. So when we tested postscripts in digital, we get mixed results. It doesn't really seem to actually be as effective as it is in the mail scenario. And I think it's for a very significant reason. How many times have you put a PS in an email that you've sent to somebody? Hardly ever, right? And so what we try to get people to do when they think about their email is we say, look, what you're trying to do is simulate a one-to-one conversation with somebody else, right? The
Mhm.
reason why your email probably doesn't do as well as a more optimized email is because it looks like marketing. It's got images, it's got
Right.
graphics, it's got HTML everywhere. And what we've tested over and over again is stripping away all the HTML, getting rid of all the images, all the buttons, everything that resembles marketing, and actually just rewriting the email as if it's, coming from one person to another person, and it's plain text, and it has
Mhm.
a huge difference in terms of response.
Yeah.
We've tested it in different countries. We've tested that in different languages. And it's like between 100 and 350% increase in conversion just by making that one simple move.
If you are wondering why I get super excited about having guests like Tim on, it's because of this. It's sort of taking everything that you have as gut instinct as a fundraiser and confirming it with data, which is something that I think a lot of us fundraisers don't think about, right? We try to trust ourselves in the field. We try to trust what has worked for us before, but having somebody like you and your organization back it up with sort of science and research is something that kind of feels great, because it proves that what we've been doing is working in a okay, now I can go and double down on my efforts rather than maybe kind of like shy away from what we expect. This is the sort of the end of the year when we're recording this particular podcast, and there are occasionally some people currently that think that giving it or appeals at the end of the year or asking for money at the end of the year might not be appropriate because of where we are in COVID country and the whole what's happening with this world. We can't ask for money.
Mhm.
Is this the silliest thing you've ever heard, or is there some merit to this?
Well, yeah, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation a couple of days after Giving Tuesday,
Yep.
because all of our clients' Giving Tuesday campaigns were up significantly year over year. And that's been the trend that we've seen since the start of the whole COVID-19 pandemic. So we've actually been tracking all of that stuff. So through one of our mystery donor studies, we took all of the data, which is like, imagine like a giant Gmail inbox, and you're getting emails every day from hundreds of different nonprofit organizations. So we took all of that data, we created a series of different visualizations. And what we're seeing is that email volume is up significantly. So nonprofits are sending way more emails this year compared to last year. And you say, okay, well, what does that translate into donors giving?
Mhm.
Online revenue is up 30% year over year. And that was before Giving Tuesday. So I'd be interested to see if that number has actually gone up even more
Yeah.
compared to the previous year. And it's because this is really our lifeline during this time.
Yeah.
So I think anybody that doesn't really launch an aggressive digital fundraising campaign at the end of this year does it to their own peril, honestly.
Yep, I think so too. And I think there are people who want to give, they don't know how to help. And I think really with
Right.
this whole society in general wants to help. They want to do good. They want to be a part of a solution to something. Not a lot of people know where to go, what to do, and how to help. They've lost their ability to volunteer face to face with somebody. They've lost the ability to maybe go somewhere and do something, and yet they still want to help. And so if you are not using your solicitations, or you're not going out there and making asks and then being very specific about what you're asking for, don't give them the runaround of like, well, whatever I think you can do. People want direction. They want some sort of thing in a time where there isn't a clear path. Whatever politically and sort of your day-to-day activities, because you're sitting at home because you can't go anywhere, kind of thing. People are looking for a path, and I think if you can do that as an organization, give them clear direction on how that happens, that I think that's the best.
We have a maxim that we operate by. It's clarity trumps persuasion, right? We sometimes get bogged down in trying to be like too kind of, I don't know, like slick and subtle, and that really is not helpful in any way. Like clarity is ultimately the thing that helps people understand what the challenge is and where they fit in to be able to meet that challenge.
As someone who does A/B testing all the time and does research, what would you say in your sort of experience to the nonprofit who is timid about sending something out because it is not perfect? I think in the nonprofit world, we are very hesitant on getting everything 100% right before trusting it goes out or gets mailed. And I'm not talking about punctuation, and I'm not talking about that, but if they don't know enough about the organization because they're new, or they don't know about soliciting because they've never done it before, and they hesitate and they stop and they don't pursue or do. What can you tell organizations about that from your experience, sort of experimenting with a lot of these sort of interactions, that can help them just pick up the phone and just begin the process as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty simplistic, but you just have to do it. I mean, like honestly, like, and what it does is it will help you to evolve your understanding of your donors, because every single encounter you have, if you look at the data or you look at the outcomes, or if you analyze the conversation, if it's a telephone thing, you're getting some intelligence back that will help you to evolve your understanding of your donors, what they care about, what works and what doesn't work. But if you just sit on your hands and say, well, I got to wait till it's perfect, you'll never arrive at that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what optimization is all about. It's about like doing things, looking at the outcomes, analyzing the data, and saying, what can I do to make it better next time?
Speaking of data, we talk a lot about collecting and analyzing data, and like spending a little bit of time asking better questions. Is there a piece of data that you have found is really helpful that maybe nonprofits don't collect but should start collecting? Is there a piece and again, we know name and address in an email. Yeah.
Yes.
But is there an interesting piece of data that you have found to be very fascinating in connecting their either capacity or affinity for a nonprofit?
Well, I probably have to say
that it could be more than one, but I figured like one.
So almost every organization that I've ever encountered uses Google Analytics, which tracks web activity. It comes to their website. Most people look at their reports and they're just like, oh, we got that many visits this month. We got that many last month. So we're doing good. But what people don't realize is that there's the opportunity to collect so much more data with that tool. And it's a free tool, by the way. So it's like, it doesn't really cost you anything. And that's by using, this is getting really geeky,
I love it.
UTM tracking codes. So what UTM tracking codes enable you to do is to be able to understand, where did people come from? Did they click on a Facebook post that I made? Did they click from an email that I sent? Did they click over from, some other ad that I ran somewhere on somebody else's website? It enables you to track all that stuff. So when it comes to the place where you have to make decisions about where am I going to make investments, you can actually track where these people came from, what they did they give or not, what's their average gift, what's their value, and then you can start to make intelligent decisions about where you're going to allocate your budget. So that's one piece that very, very few nonprofits take advantage of. They all have Google Analytics, but very few of them use the UTM tracking codes.
I love that. That's such a great tip, because I think we get overwhelmed with the amount of things we could do. And yet we just want to concentrate on a couple that we can do, see the benefits of it so we can dive into a little bit more. And speaking of more, there happens to be a giant learning system that you have at NextAfter. Can you talk a little bit about this giant resource center you have, and how does one get a hold of all of that info to be involved in kind of this remarkable research that you've been doing for nonprofits and that open source product? How do we get into this?
Yeah, I mean, somewhere along the way, we discovered that we're not a nonprofit organization ourselves, but we're very much a cause-based organization. And what we see as our cause is to decode what works in digital fundraising and get it into the hands of as many fundraisers as possible, so we can achieve what we see as our vision of unleashing the most generous generation in the history of the world. So how did we get there? Well, we just started by just trying to help people. And so we were like, okay, we just ran all these tests this month. Let's go do a webinar and just share that with folks. And what we found is that there was a huge appetite for that. So we kept doing more webinars. Then we started creating like ebooks out of those webinars. And then we said, well, we need to create training to help other organizations to be able to, number one, make use of all the learnings that we're accumulating, because nobody has the time or effort to go through 2,500 online experiments, right? Number two, we need to equip organizations or practitioners, fundraising practitioners, with certain tools so that they can actually be more effective in their craft. And so that's what's led to the start of the NextAfter Institute, which we started about 3 years ago. We've developed 8 different certification courses, everything from email fundraising optimization, landing page optimization, turning Facebook likes into donors, A/B testing for nonprofits, copywriting for nonprofits, Google Analytics for nonprofits. We have all of that stuff. And it's all accessible, living in the post-COVID age that we're in now. It's all virtual. So anybody could go in and they can access it from sitting at home. They can take it at their own pace and make use of that. In addition to those training materials, we have tons of free resources. We do webinars every single month. We've got ebooks and guides and self-assessments, all kinds of stuff. It's all available on our website at nextafter.com. And that's really our mission, is really to get that stuff out there. And so, we've invested heavily in making free stuff for people, right? Because I mean, gosh, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, I want to look back and say, we've actually done something great. And it is possible, by the way, like that whole vision of unleashing the most generous generation in the history of the world. That's not like a pipe dream, because of this big wealth transfer that's taking place right now. Gen X and millennials are being positioned to potentially be the most generous generation in the history of the world. It has to be unlocked, though. It has to be unleashed. And the only people that can do that are the fundraisers in the trenches every day.
Tim, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I have taken away at least a dozen little nuggets, and by little I mean like massive nuggets of great information. And I know that everybody is going to be able to access more if they go to nextafter.com. That's the website, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yes, nailed it. And I encourage everybody to do so, because this is, again, it's backing up your gut instinct with research and science so that you can feel great about your position as a fundraiser, your position as a nonprofit leader. And again, if you're a small or medium-sized nonprofit, this is built for you. This is all of the big stuff that has been filtered down into a digestible, understandable A/B testing. You don't have to do this on your own. You don't have to do this by yourself. You finally have a resource that you can go to in order to unlock your own fundraising potential, regardless of your size, your scale, and your scope. Tim, thank you so much for being a guest on the official Do Good Better podcast. This has been a pleasure. I have a feeling that this isn't going to be the last time we have you on and the last time that we chat. This was just an absolute blast. And from one fundraising nerd to another, I appreciate your time and your insights and your resources that you have here, my friend.
Patrick, I can geek out with you anytime you want. So you just let me know, my friend.
I'm going to put out the bat signal for geek out moments every time. Thank you so much, Tim, again, for being on the official Do Good Better podcast. And again, all the information that Tim's talking about will be in the show notes. So click on there, subscribe, go sign up, go take a bunch of courses, and go on and learn everything you can about NextAfter. Appreciate you being on the show. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, man.